Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Linda Lamp, and I'm here with my co-host, Mary Ardania, with our podcast, Let's Become a Beloved Society, Conversations Illuminating Our Path to Wholeness. Thank you for joining us today. And just a reminder, this is a call-in podcast, so we'd love it if you join the conversation, either by texting or calling into the phone on the screen, or if you're just listening, that number is 1-907-351-3003. You can also email your questions to questions@walkingthroughyourwalls.com. I don't tend to monitor the email during the message, but or during our podcast, if I see it pop up, I can go to it. But usually email would be either after the show or in between shows. So we're here today. We had a couple of questions that came in from last week. One was based on last week's conversation, and that'll be the one we'll start with. But I'm going to read both. The lead-in question was, how do we create a beloved society with all the lies and fakery that's happening in our media? And then the other question, based on last week, was the discussion of religion. Is it possible to change our direction on Earth? The presumption being that we're doomed and headed for destruction. So Mary and I thought we'd start with that topic first, since it's related to last week's conversation. And is it possible to change our direction? So there are a lot of people that believe that we've already hit what's called the tipping point. In quantum physics, critical mass is at about 3.5%. And there are a number of people in the spiritual community that believe that that we've achieved that we have 3.5% of the 8 billion people on the planet attempting to create the world of heaven on earth that we're all here supposedly engaged in, right? So in that sense, it should be possible. And there are a lot of people that are saying that we've achieved that. But it certainly doesn't look or feel possible to many of us. This new advent of the chat AI, artificial intelligence, the ability to turn videos into fakery, take live shots of people and then either lip sync their voices to something else or change what they're saying or change the entire quality of the feeling of the moment through fakery and trickery. So navigating in the world has gotten a lot harder and a lot more confusing. One of the things that I think of around this topic and also around the other question is what Barbara Marx Hubbard taught. Barbara Marx Hubbard was a spiritual leader for 50 years. She ran for vice president at one time and proposed that the White House have a peace room. They have a war room, and her approach to remedying some of the problems in government was to suggest that we have a peace room. To this day, we don't have a peace room.
No.
And what Barbara was very fond of was the idea of circles, building a circle within your local community. And as I look around the world now, it really seems as if this is going to be our ultimate solution. because I think that to a great extent, there is a fair amount of doom and destruction ahead of us, right? I think there's no other way. We've got too many people on the planet. The Earth itself is struggling to survive. We've wiped out millions of species of animals just in our existence, which, when we come back to the point of being here, when we come back to our reason for being here, we all have the same reason for being here. If you've been following our work, we're all here to experience and create heaven on earth. And I don't think that we're being very good stewards of the planet if we're wiping out millions of species as we go. And so at some point, we're going to have to balance this out in this physical realm. The problem is that a lot of people believe in lack and scarcity, and that's not what's happening here. There is no lack and there is no scarcity because we are creative beings. And if we put our minds to it, we can create everything we need. But when we have limited thinking and we have these beliefs in lack and scarcity and doom and gloom, and when those seem to be the main headlines every day, how do we even engage people around us to create local circles? Mary, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, my main thought that I've had for a while now is that idea of creating local circles, like, because you're in some of the circles that I'm in.
Right.
Like, I'm a real proponent of finding your people in various environments and spending as much time as you can with them, be it on Zoom. Like, we have our book club that we go to together on Sunday mornings on Zoom, and then we have another meeting after that. And then here at work, I don't have circles as much because I don't usually have multiples here at once, but sometimes I do, like 3 students maybe at once. And it's like just finding the people who are open, and that means in both directions, really open to what I have to give, and are also interested in participating in a reciprocal supportive relationship.
Right.
They can all be different. I have a very supportive family. So one of my circles is me and my brother going grocery shopping every other Saturday.
Right.
And, part of it was just the older I get, the more I recognize that my connections with humans are the most important thing. And that my job here on earth is just to have as many beautiful connections with humans as I can in various degrees.
Right.
So, some of my circles are like the security guard across the street, and all we really do is say good morning every morning. And then the security guard inside the building, we have more conversations,
Right.
But it's like even just the sort of random, Mary's big on air quotes today, random people who you come across in your daily life, just the bonds that we can form, trivial though they may seem, like the lady who rides the same bus as me most of the time, and we really only smile. I don't think she speaks English very well, frankly. I've heard her speaking Spanish with people, and she never replies to me when I speak to her in English. So, maybe I'll try saying buenos dias next time instead of, good morning,
Right.
to see what happens. But it's like those little interactions throughout the day can give you a real sense of belonging. And I remember actually reading about it in psychology today, that we all know that, like our friends and close family, that those connections are important. And we maybe don't perceive these others' connections as important, but it's another layer of connection
Right.
that gives us a feeling of society, community,
Right.
right? We used to all have
Right.
more of a sense of community in the
Right.
olden days when people went and built a barn together or whatever,
Right. Right.
and we still see things like that when there are real problems like floods or something, 9/11 back in New York City, and everyone kind of joins together to support each other. So I think that cultivating those connections in our everyday life is really important. And also, that's how we can connect to people who might live next door to us and feel differently from us on certain political things. And then
Right.
we can know them as
Right.
humans. And maybe we can all be able to be more compassionate and gentle with each other.
Yeah. 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 I see a certain risk actually in the idea of forming circles, because it comes back to this idea of religion and separation, right? Every time we connect in a certain way with people, we are also subconsciously perhaps thinking, and those people don't fit in.
Right.
And what we really need to be cultivating is that universal love for everyone, even the people that we wouldn't consider currently in our circle, right? The people that we disagree with and don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything over. And so it's really, to me, it's a challenge, because you want to we are, I believe, in a time on this planet where we need to circle the wagons, but we need to do it in a way that is not secular, if that makes any sense at all. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's a circle of love that includes everyone, even if they don't consider themselves in your circle because they disagree with you, or they, have some, other agenda. Um, because most of those people are going to be people who are clinging to old teachings and don't understand the absolute connectedness amongst everything.
That's one way where I think that these sort of random connections can help. Although, so far it hasn't gone any deeper than that with me. But I sort of imagine that if something were going on, these people who I've formed these like trivial bonds with, there would be a feeling of we're on the same side, at least to start with. And that right there helps with the disagreements. A thing that happened yesterday afternoon, which is really has got me thinking a lot about this stuff, is one of the people who's like, I mean, she's been my favorite student here for a while now. And, she's like my really, I feel have felt very close to her. And there was a kind of disturbing thing that happened yesterday, where we disagreed pretty severely about something that's pretty important to me. And it was like, okay, I'll just go do what I was doing and process a bit and see what this is. And I figured out that one of the things that bothered me the most wasn't that she disagreed with me, but that she said back to me something like, well, I don't think blah blah. And I'm like, oh, well, I never said blah blah. And that right there is really important. We have to, at least when we're disagreeing, make sure that we're talking the same language and using the same terms and not putting words in each other's mouths, because that happens a lot,
Right.
right?
It
I
does.
disagree with you on one thing and then you turn around and say something else, and I'm like, but feeling all blindsided.
Right.
So, and I might have a conversation with this person the next time I see her Depends on how soon it is, because, last semester of law school, people tend to be very busy.
Right. Right.
But it just really brought it home to me to think about all this stuff, about how much she and I agree on things, and how surprised I was that we disagreed on this thing. But it's like she's allowed to have her own opinion, absolutely.
Right.
And if we're having a conversation, let's at least be respectful
Right.
of each other's position and not put words in each other's mouth.
Right.
So it was kind of a really good lesson for me on this subject,
Right.
and apparently I'm going to have more, as you know, because a little aside we had before we came on here that may come up in this conversation. So
Right.
it's
Right.
a time for this. It's a time for a deep review of what's working and what isn't.
Right.
And it's like when the scales fall off, I mean, how do we deal with our own disillusionment and disappointment and make sure to stick with the facts? I always try to find the facts, so I'm not reacting based on just my emotional baggage.
Right.
So, but it's a good lesson for us all
Right.
in how we want to approach things in this time when everything is really loaded
Right.
and, like, what's the word? Ready to explode.
Definitely. There's a tension. There's an underlying frustration, I think. Yes, things feel really challenging. Personal interactions, negotiating things, everything seems very challenging.
Like a powder keg. That's the
Right.
word I
Yeah,
was looking for.
that's the
And
perfect
like
word.
just walking through
Right.
the world, you might
Right.
happen to cross paths with someone who's a powder keg. And then they might happen to blow up when you're right there.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with you, but it's
Right.
like they're out there,
Right.
these powder kegs.
Right. Right. So we have some people that have joined us, and I just want to give them a road marker for where we are. We've taken up the question regarding religion based on last week's conversation. Is it possible to change our direction on Earth? The presumption being we're headed for doom and gloom. And so that's the question on the table at the moment. And I think it's really important that we mention Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements again, because the Four Agreements, you can Google it and get a graphic of it. It's a little book, but it can boil down into a simple graphic. Always be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions, and don't take things personally. And the first two kind of go without saying, but the second two are really important breakthroughs people can make in their lives, in their personal interactions with other people and their communications.
Yeah.
Okay, not making assumptions. And I don't know if we want to segue into the other question at this point or not, but not making assumptions is a really important thing to learn if you want to change the direction that we're going in this world, on this planet.
Yes.
If we want to save ourselves from doom and gloom, not making assumptions is like a really key piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because what happens when we make assumptions is we're bringing our baggage, our own interpretation and our own baggage to a situation, and we're layering it into the situation where it doesn't belong at all. It
Right.
doesn't belong there. It's not in the situation. And what we need to learn how to do is look at things with clear eyes, with non-judgmental eyes, with open perceptions, and not a lot of predetermined conclusions or assumptions.
Yeah. We have to give each other the benefit of the doubt
Yes.
more than anything. You
Right.
know,
Right. Right.
we've stopped doing that a lot in society. We just come out of the gate assuming the worst of people.
Right. And judging.
Judging.
And it's imperative, if we're going to change anything on this planet, that we stop these behaviors. And this is what's so critical, is that people aren't talking about that. They're talking about stopping other people's behaviors.
Right.
Right? They want to stop this person from doing that, and we want to stop you from doing this. But in reality, what needs to happen is we all need to stop all of that and turn inward and cultivate ourselves, nurture ourselves, heal our baggage, and not be projecting our garbage out onto everybody else through our assumptions and our judgments.
And then once we've done that, we can maybe start approaching other people with an open mind and an open heart,
Right.
And seeing them as the full range of who they really are, instead of the qualities about their opinions that we don't like and think they should change.
Right.
And I'm speaking of myself as much as anybody. You know, to be absolutely clear, I am not at all a little saint in this matter. I bring my judgments and my opinions with me everywhere I go. And that's why, you know, when these things happen, this is what's different. When these things happen, I stop and look at it and go, okay, you know, what's going on here? What are my assumptions?
Right.
What is this person really doing? And how much of it can I even understand that way?
Right.
So then I go back to focusing on my behavior. Am I being a loving, you know, mirror?
Right. 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 Neil Donald Walsh suggests at any given moment that you can ask yourself this question: what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul?
Yeah.
And I think if people were to get into the habit of doing that, they would find that they have perhaps very little to talk about, because so much of what we spend our day doing is judging other people and judging other situations and talking about how things should be different. But they're all things that we absolutely have no direct control over, other than perhaps at the ballot box. So there is a real awakening that has to happen. And we've talked about this, because the challenge now with all of this artificial intelligence, if you will, and technological capability to alter the truth, where are we going to get our moral rudder? Because there's no moral rudder out there that I'm seeing. Sure, people are getting their moral rudders from their churches, but most of those rudders that they're getting from their churches are actually steeped in separation and judgment and a lack of love. They are not the teachings of Jesus. They are not the acts of Jesus. And all of this business of, you know, Christianity. I saw something the other day. This is just a sidebar, but I saw something where somebody seem to suggest that Jesus came here to start Christianity. And I just want to go on record as that isn't how it worked. Not how it worked at all. He came, he had gifts, he looked around, not unlike many spiritual people that we have on the planet right now. He looked around and he tried to share his knowledge with others.
Right.
What he was sharing was universal love, was that you can do anything I do, that we all had that capability. We all have the capability to turn wine into water or water into wine.
Or walk on water.
Walk on water, all of that stuff. Every miracle he performed, he said, you all can do this. And rather than listening to him, learning from him, and becoming skilled as he was, we just put him on a pedestal and said, oh, look at what he did, and let's worship him. That is not solving the problems on the earth today.
And that is not what Jesus wanted.
Right.
You know, Christ is a consciousness.
Right. Exactly. And so, and that's what we're talking about here. How we become a beloved society is to embrace Christ consciousness. That's the simple answer.
Yeah. So, and Christ consciousness leads you to say things like, how many times do I let him slap me on the face? Right. 7 times? And Jesus says 70 times, 7 times. Like forever. You never raise your hand to fight back. That's what Jesus said, you know?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Jesus said a lot of things.
Right.
And they are not really what's driving the church today, except maybe with regard to the members of the church. And even then, in a lot of these big churches, I would say not. For the mega churches where the heads of them have tons and tons of money to continue to require tithing by their poor parishioners, who are they looking out for? Yeah, that's my personal bias.
Yeah.
My assumptions.
Right.
Show me something different, I'd be happy to see it. I really would.
We can kind of segue into how do we create a beloved society with all the lies and fakery that's happening in the media. Now, for those who are listening to this or watching later, in America this week, there has been a big kerfuffle about something that the Dalai Lama did with a small Indian boy.
Back in February, by the way.
Oh, right. It actually happened back in February. Why there is this kerfuffle going on now in the media, in social media, I'm not sure. I don't know that I got the answer from the things that I've researched. Somebody saw it fitting to edit a live stream video of the Dalai Lama with a group of people, where a small Indian boy asked if he could hug the Dalai Lama, and then they had an exchange. He went up to the Dalai Lama, and they had an exchange. Now, if you would like to see the entire exchange that occurred, there is a video that on YouTube that contains it, and I'm looking real quick to see. I have it. The title of it, you can just Google it in YouTube, or search for it in YouTube, and it will come right up. Stop sensationalizing the Dalai Lama's innocent interactions, a Tibetan's perspective. It's a 17.5-minute movie or video of a Tibetan gentleman, who gives some history and context to the video before you see it. And then you see the entire exchange between the Dalai Lama and the little boy. Chances are you may have seen a smaller clip. You may have seen the edited version. The edited version, first of all, has the little boy's face blurred out. And it's unfortunate because of that, you can't actually see the little boy's expression. What this edited video attempts to do is somehow paint the Dalai Lama as some kind of weird pervert, which couldn't be further from the truth. And you have to ask yourself, why would people do that? Who wants to do that? When you watch, if you choose to, the entire video that contains the entire piece of the exchange with the Dalai Lama and the little Indian boy, you will see that there is absolutely nothing grotesque, rude, or unbecoming. Because if you watch the whole video, you'll get the context. So there are some Tibetan traditions that if you don't know them, you might look at them and go, well, that's gross. All right? There is some kind of a tradition where they stick their tongue out. Like, I don't have anything to give you, but I can give you my breath or something. I'd have to watch the video again to be 100% educated on this. But it's a tradition of sticking their tongue out, and it has Tibetan meaning. So as an American, it's not our business to judge these people's customs. In fact, it's totally inappropriate. And really totally inappropriate to have taken this exchange between this boy, which was nothing but a loving, wonderful exchange, where the boy is the one who asked to engage with the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama agreed to give the boy a hug. And so he mixed in some Tibetan tradition into the hug. There is no reason for anybody to judge any of that. It was pure, it was innocent, and it was total love.
I would like to speak here because I know that before I saw that particular unedited video, this is what I knew. The Dalai Lama kisses the boy on the lips and asks him to suck his tongue. Now that sounds disgusting. So the context, yes, they stick out their tongue in Tibet. And I was like, yeah, but that's still not sucking the tongue. So, what's that about? And if the boy's body language, blah, 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 everything without watching. I hadn't even watched the manipulated video at that point. I thought I had enough knowledge to comment.
Right.
So the sucking the tongue thing requires more explanation,
right.
Because what the guy explains in that video in the first 15 minutes before the exchange is like when you're a little kid and you're asking mommy or daddy or grandma, can I have some money to go to the store for candy? They'll like stick out their tongue and say, eat my tongue. That's
right.
all I have to give.
Right.
Eat my tongue.
Right.
Now, here's a man who English was not his first language, and
right.
he is getting older. And I can see it being very easy to say, suck my tongue instead of eat my tongue.
Right.
And maybe eat my tongue would sound just as bad.
Right.
But the other factor that I think we really need to consider that I didn't even realize until I was way into my feelings on this subject is our tendency to sexualize absolutely everything in this country. I think it's from the puritanical influences, but it's like, if I went up to Linda and held her hand and gave her a kiss, people would be like, oh, are they lesbians? It's like everything is sexualized. I have a very good friend here now at work. She doesn't actually work with me anymore. And when we see each other, it's like big hugs. And I've wondered, and we've joked about if people think there's something going on besides just,
right.
oh my God, this is my friend whom I love and I don't work with her every day anymore.
Right.
But we still see each other a couple times a week, for
right.
lunch.
Right.
But, we have removed physical affection. I mean, now people hug more than they used to.
Right.
But like it's like platonic affection is so very limited in our culture, which is a
Right.
real shame, because then
Right.
people are starved for affection,
Right.
and then abuses are more likely to happen. So that's another aspect that
Yeah.
I think we need to consider,
Right. Right.
is our overreaction. And also, a lot of us have been sexually abused as a child. I
Right.
mean, I have,
Right.
I'm open
Right.
about that. And so many have. And so we tend to go straight to our trauma and be on the kid's side, which of course is perfect.
Right.
It's absolutely perfect. I want to be on the side of anyone who is being abused.
Right.
And also, having watched that video, I really don't think that there was any abuse of this child. I don't think there was any coercion. He didn't look, he looked a little uncomfortable at the end when the guy hugged him for like the third time or
Right.
something,
Right.
and I think he was just embarrassed about all the attention at that
Right.
point.
But even
He,
after that, he laughed.
he laughed. He
Right.
wriggled away, and then they
Right.
both laughed. It was
Right.
like there was no,
Right.
I feel
Right.
through my personal lens, which I try to be, you know, none of us can be completely unbiased, but I do have sort of science and social science training such that I look for facts,
Right.
and I look like, what's that word? Not an archaeologist, the other one. You
Anthropology.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
anthropologist,
Right.
at things I don't understand,
Right. Right.
So I feel that I'm pretty unbiased in terms of how much I can, when I'm actually observing things, when
Right.
I'm not just responding out of my own emotional reactions.
Right. Right.
So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that, because I
Yeah.
think that that's some important
Well,
perspective
and there
for
is
us
that
to
moment
remember.
in the video where, and again, this is cultural, where they put their foreheads together, and that's again another Tibetan tradition among men.
I
They put
loved that.
their foreheads together. So without the context, you can watch it, and you can. What happens is you're bringing all your own stuff, and this is why I say over and over again to folks, there isn't anything out here. Everything that you're observing and bringing your own value to it.
Right,
It's coming from you. It
right,
doesn't have any inherent value in and of itself.
right.
And so coming back to the question, uh, how do we create a beloved society with all the lies and fakery in the media?
Oh, right. That was the question.
Again, we have to come back to our individual selves, and we have to be operating from a place of genuine humanity, right? We have to understand what our sole purpose is. And I think that that's, the perhaps the biggest thing that faces humanity right now is people coming to the realization that they have a soul, and their soul has a purpose, and that purpose is to create heaven on earth. And outside of that, nothing else is really important.
I I think we have to, like, in this world of fakeries and stuff, as part of the question, what we have to do is remain open-minded and seek out the truth. Like, don't assume that what we're seeing is the whole truth, especially when it clearly wasn't the whole
Right,
truth. It
right,
was a cherry picked bit. And some people say that the reason why is because apparently they've identified the next Dalai Lama, and China wants to cast doubt on the whole thing, you know, to take the power away from the Dalai Lama system or whatever. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I do know that, I personally believe that it's time for patriarchy to take a tumble. and I'm not really into patriarchal religions and systems, even if it's someone who does seem to be, for the most part, a very loving and kind
Right.
person. He's not
Right.
perfect either. He's
No.
said many sort of questionable things about women or whatever, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah.
Right.
But just to make sure that we're not buying into the manipulation that's
Right.
happening,
Right.
because that's just going to get worse and worse, especially as we're approaching, and really we're in the thick of this. I mean, I don't know, I was going to be really dramatic and call it the battle for good and evil, but it's the battle between the old paradigm and the new world that wants to be built, right? The old ways and the loving society that we're trying to make, where love is the uber value.
Right.
And it is a struggle, I don't
Right.
know if you have a better word for it, but there is a dynamic going on of conflict between the old and the new. And we need to, so the point being that there's a lot of manipulation of the media and stuff. People have an agenda and they're trying to push that agenda.
Right.
So be curious, be skeptical, be open to new information that might cause you to question. Like one of the things that says in the Neil Donald Walsh books that I love every time it comes up is, are you willing to believe that there is something you don't know about God, the knowing of which could change everything? Like that's the kind of mindset
Right.
that we are challenged to embrace. The
Right.
kind of mindset that questions everything we think we know, to
Right.
allow in all the other stuff that could be true and help us create a beloved society more easily
Right.
than hanging on to the stuff that we thought we knew before.
Right. Right. Yeah, we have to realize that we are really creating our experience as we go through our day.
Yes.
Whether we realize it or not, we're making choices. We're constantly making choices. And we're
Yes.
constantly influencing our experience through our perceptions and our preconceived notions.
Yes.
And so it's really, it really behooves everyone to try and adopt a methodology for going through your day where you don't allow yourself to get swept up in all of the mass hysteria that exists out there. And I can't help but wonder, it feels really like a very modern day Atlantis happening right now, that we are, what they say about Atlantis is that the technology ended up destroying them, right? That they couldn't, they got too technological and they exceeded their ability to control it and it consumed them.
Oh.
Well, isn't that kind of what's happening here now? The technology is insane. And I know for myself on a daily basis, some app wants something from me. It either updated itself or it's changed where the buttons are or, something. It's constantly something. When you sit down to go to work and all of a sudden you've got 3 pop-ups that you have to deal with before you can even get to work because all this other stuff is happening.
Right.
So I feel like we're approaching some kind of technological tipping point. And I wonder if that is what's going to happen. And we're going to have a sort of dampening of that technology and be forced to come back into more local, the fact that we can fly avocados all over the world. You can buy an avocado anywhere on this planet, I think, at this point. It's ridiculous, the kinds of food movement that we have. And I wonder, is the impulse of the universe, is the way to solve Earth's problem to become much more local? And if that's the case, are these systems going to fail in big ways? And rather than, I'm not trying to scare people or be a doom and gloom, because again, there is no lack in scarcity here. The world could end tomorrow. We don't die. None of us would die. The housing would die, but our souls would still exist. Our souls will go on. And that's the piece I think that people maybe don't quite have, is that understanding that this is all just a temporary illusion based on a collective decision. And it will be very easy to come up with a different collective decision when the time comes.
Well, one of the factors in this country with the fundamentalist Christians is that a lot of those people think that this is the end times and they're going to get sucked up to heaven. So that's why they don't care about the world going to hell in a handbasket,
Right. Right.
Which is kind of tragic for the rest of us, when they are the ones controlling things. I wanted to say, based on the other thing we talked about, what I like to say is nothing has any meaning except the meaning that I give it. Nothing has any intrinsic meaning. The things
Right.
that happen to me as I go about my day, they have the meaning that I give to them.
Right.
So it's just as easy for me to give it a positive meaning as a negative one.
Right.
Most of the time,
Right.
that's just, I go through my life as much as possible feeling chipper and happy, and it's not a denial thing so much as it is a choice thing.
Right.
I choose to smile at strangers because
Right.
why not?
Right.
Sometimes they smile back, and that's nice.
Right. 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 Right.
I think it really is that simple on the personal level. Sometimes there are bigger concerns, but like to keep yourself, an easy way to become a beloved society is to greet everyone with love.
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly. Being able to just being able to smile at another person. And the thing is that what people don't realize is that our wiring is such that the way the body works is if you smile, the cells in your body will respond to that and they'll all be happy because you're smiling. It's like magic. It's like a magic pill. But if you don't make that effort and you don't smile, then your cells are like, well, she's not happy. and they have that subconsciousness to them as you're going about your day because you're not smiling.
Mm-hmm. And laughing turns it up even more.
And laughing turns it up even more. It really is true that laughter is the best medicine.
It is.
There are scientific studies that show that people who are ill that engage in laughter heal much more quickly.
Yes.
Than people who don't use laughter. And in fact, for many years, I think I still have the websites, Laugh to Heal. I think they're all just directed to my Linda Lamp website now. And for those of you listening, that's with a Y, LYNDA, LAMP.com. but yeah, for years I had a Laugh to Heal website dedicated to trying to educate people on healing through the use of laughter. I dreamed of having like devices that had all the preloaded shows on them, like all the comedies, all kinds of different comedies, uh, Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges, and there's a whole variety. The problem is that with time, what people find, one problem, it's not the problem, but one problem with that whole idea is that with time, what people find funny changes.
Yes.
And so, so I think it was a great idea, but I think it would be hard to implement.
But as you know, I have been a laughter yoga leader and a laughter meditation leader. And
Yes,
one of the things about laughter yoga, he started out, Madan Kataria and his wife, I forget her name right now, he was writing an article about laughter, the best medicine. And
right,
he started a laughter club in India, in Mumbai, him and his wife and 4 other people. And they started with jokes. And then they realized, like when you mentioned the Three Stooges, sometimes people don't think the jokes are funny,
right,
and they can be offensive. So his thing was, I have to figure out a way to do this where that's not going to happen.
right,
So, if you don't know what laughter yoga is, we do little, I call it like kindergarten for adults. We
right,
just do silly little games that make us laugh. And it's like fake it till you make it.
right,
So, an example is like, oh, I'm going to take my laughter vitamin. Here's my laughter vitamin. I take it and it makes me go, ho, ho, ho. And when you're in a circle with 6 people and you're all going, ho, ho, ho,
oh,
you might start laughing because it's
right,
silly. Or,
right,
I have my little time release one, and you take it, you wait, and then it goes, hey.
right,
So, we have all these silly games that we play.
right,
And I think you can see how if you're with a bunch of other people doing this silly stuff, it's just fun. And you start laughing for real. And I'll tell you, at the end of a laughter yoga session, it was magic because I would feel relaxed and calm, but also invigorated.
right,
Like I would walk there feeling so tired, and I
right,
would walk out of the park where we did it feeling energized, but also calm.
right,
So
right,
it's magic. Little
right,
plug for laughter yoga. If you Google, there might be a laughter yoga club near you. Although with COVID, I'm not sure because
right,
laughing was a high risk activity with COVID. So,
right, right.
but you can
Well,
always laugh on your own. And if you have to watch a movie or something, do it. But,
right,
you
right,
know, get in your laughter every day and you'll feel better. I laugh all the time.
right, right. Uh, and technically, officially, the era of COVID has ended.
Mm.
So, I was just thinking recently about maybe it's time to start doing a live circle again. I used to do a live circle on Sundays, and then when COVID hit, it was like, well, we got to stop doing that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think understanding the role that laughter can play, especially in your healing, is really critical. And I think it's a great tool that we don't realize we have.
Yeah.
People getting together and laughing either at a movie together or laughing at playing games together or whatever. Um, very, very healing and peaceful.
And laughter is an international language.
Yeah,
You don't have to speak the same language, and you don't have to speak the same political language or
right,
religious language to
right,
laugh together.
right, right.
It breaks down all barriers.
This is true. This is true. The quality of humor has changed, though, and I think that uh, it isn't so much funny anymore. Like I remember the Roadrunner commercial or cartoons. And those the things that the coyote does are supposed to be funny, but all of the whacking and even like the Three Stooges, the whacking and the slapping and
Yeah, I was never into the Three Stooges myself.
I never was either. I was very fond of Laurel and Hardy.
I liked them better.
Yeah, I was very fond of them. But even there, I think there's physical violence.
Yeah,
Is
and insults.
It's not really. It should never have been funny.
Right.
The other kind of humor that I can no longer really tolerate is humor at other people's expenses.
Yeah, any of that. I don't either.
Hang on, I need to cough. Yeah, I find it, I used to be able to watch America's Home Videos or Funniest Videos or whatever it was, and I would laugh a lot. And now when I watch it, when people get hurt,
Yeah.
It's not funny.
Right.
I mean, there might be a visual that you could say is funny, but when the ultimate outcome is the person is hurt,
right,
I can't laugh at that anymore.
Right. And there's a lot of movies that are supposed to be comic that I have never found funny because it's at the expense of other people and it's mean. Right. I don't really like mean-spirited comedy, and I don't like how everyone has to push the envelope. And these comedians who do things that are racist or whatever, misogynistic, and right. They say that they're pushing the envelope, but like someone pushed that envelope 100 years ago.
Right. Right.
Like it's not an envelope anymore. Go find something new
to
be outrageous about,
Yeah. 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 So in summary for today, I think the answer to both the questions, how do we create a beloved society with all the lies and fakery that's happening? And is it possible to change our direction? The answer to both of these is really, in one sense, the same, which is to each of us try to be the best human being we can be through love, hope, and grace with one another. And that's, if each person on this planet right now, if all 8 billion whatever number would adopt an attitude of just attempting to be the best they could be through hope, love, and grace, we wouldn't have any problems.
And let's quickly acknowledge that one of the big problems with that scenario is that so many people have so much shame and self-loathing that they can't even have love and grace towards themselves.
Right.
So then they spew it out at other people. So maybe that's what we should talk about next week.
Right.
How does self-love fit into this equation?
Self-love is the key.
Yeah.
Right? Self-love is the absolute key.
Yeah. You and I both know that. But it's really kind of amongst my acquaintance, it's amazing to me how many people still beat up on themselves on a regular basis.
Right. All right. Well, that'll be the topic for next week. It's funny. Yesterday, I had a T-shirt on that said "Love your the heart" with 2 hands, and it said "Love yourself." And then at the on the side, it said "Life is good," which is where the shirt came from. And somebody at the grocery store acknowledged the shirt. She said, "Oh, that's great. Where'd you get that?" I said, "From Life is Good." So it's loving ourselves is actually the key to the whole kit and caboodle. So
it absolutely is.
That'll be our topic next week. Love you all. See you next week, next Friday. And I was going to look at the calendar and see what date that was. But in any case,
17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
That's 21st. So we'll see you then. Yeah, right. It would help if I knew what today was.
I didn't know what today was, but I know what Monday is, and I counted from there.
All right. We both got the same answer. That's good.
That's
All right,
good.
my dear. Love you all. Namaste. Much love. We'll see you next week.